it's just about 5 o'clock, so croeso I gyfarthod cynllunio, sorry. Oh, well, everyone's been here before, so please note that this meeting will be recorded for subsequent broadcast, so I won't read the rest out because we've all heard it before. So are there any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we've had Councillor Julian Amos.
Yes. Right. Are there any declarations of interest at all? No, there's no declarations of interest. So the next item on the agenda is planning application P180316, the land adjoining the south of Swansea Road to the east of Winebound Court and northwest of Old Winchfower Road, Swansea Road. So I think Dave has taken us through this report. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to an area of land which measures approximately 1.9 hectares, largely comprises a former tip site. The site itself is characterised, or can be characterised, as an area of grassland with steep embankments, particularly along the northern and eastern boundaries. Something happened? There we go. Okay. Yeah, so it's essentially characterised as a grassland area with steep embankments along the northern and southeast boundaries, where it abuts Swansea Road at the top and Old Winchfower Road to the bottom. Outline planning permission is sought for residential development, which would comprise of 39 dwellings with a mixture of detached and semi-detached dwellings. The details relating to the proposed access, appearance, layout and scale of the dwelling are actually being considered as part of this application. Normally with outline applications they're reserved for future consideration. The only aspect which is being reserved is the landscaping. So for all intents and purposes this is essentially like a full application. It's really the conditions later on which change as a result of it being an outline. Whilst no objections were raised as a result of the consultation exercise, it is noted that 16 letters of objection were received as part of the publicity exercise. The concerns are summarised on pages 8 and 9 of the report, but in the main they relate to highway safety implications, ecological impacts, impacts on residential amenity, the design of the development and the ground conditions of the site. The merits of the application are set out in detail in the planning consideration section of the report. It is noted that the site lies within the settlement limits and is allocated in the LDP for residential development. So the principle of developing the site is essentially already been established. The proposed layout of the scheme is deemed to be acceptable and would enable the development to integrate with the local context. The means of access into the site from Swansea Road is considered to be appropriate and would not lead to an adverse highway safety impact. It's also been demonstrated that the development would not have an adverse impact on ecological interests, nor would it adversely impinge on the amenities of the neighbouring occupiers. So just to give you an idea of the scheme, so the principal access into the site would be off Swansea Road at the top. That would essentially go through the centre, and all the houses in the main would front onto this road. There are a few houses near the entrance there which would front onto the green open space at the start of Winebound Court. There's no access through the site onto what is essentially a private lane down the site there leading on to Winchfower Road, or Old Winchfower Road, although there would be a little pedestrian link there to add to the integration so that people can walk through the site still. Just to give you an idea of the topography, as you can see, so this section here runs from Swansea Road at the bottom, to the left, across the site. So you can see as you hit Old Winchfower Road, it's quite steep near the entrance, well, the entrance that side, but going across the site. Again, as you go further up this part of the site, the levels become much steeper. So this just gives you an impression of the site. So this photo at the top left is the existing access coming into the site off Swansea Road, or Swansea Road and Winebank Court, and then that extends through to the other end of the site where it leads on to Old Winchhour Road at the far end. The bottom two photos give you a sort of an impression of the main part of the site where the development would be. So as you can see, it's largely a grass plateau. These are the houses on top left there, which currently front onto the private lane. To the right here, you can see these are the recently developed houses which form part of Cyfarthfa Mews, and the bottom there gives you an impression of what the developer would be dealing with in terms of the embankments. One of the concerns that was raised was the stability of this site because of it being a tip, and this is an example of where some of the material has slipped over time down to what is a watercourse at the bottom. So this, in terms of stability, there were significant concerns about how the site could be developed, but in support of the application they did carry out an initial site investigation, and that set out mitigation measures on how the site could be developed. Essentially it would involve removing the top surface material, so the grassed areas which is embedded into the colliery spoil, and then they would introduce new material to compact it basically and make a solid ground then for the development to be built on. Part of their recommendation as well is to carry out further investigations about stabilising the embankment, so there's scope there to improve the stability of the site. Therefore it's recommended in the report that the application be approved subject to the conditions set out on pages 18 to 22.
Are there any questions, David? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd because of the scale, I'd like to call a site visit on this one. Yeah, I think it fails to meet the criteria set out in the Merthyr Local Development Plan Policy BW7, which states that it supports sustainable developments in terms of scale, height, massing, environmental treatment, materials, detail laying, mix and density, integrate effectively with adjacent spaces, public realm, and enhance the street scene. I think it fails on all that criteria.
Is there a seconder?
Yes, I'll second.
Seconded. So we'll put it to the vote then for a site visit. Is that okay? That was carried then unanimously. Oh, yes.
Obviously, this will arrange a site meeting. It'll come back to the planning committee. But when it comes back to the planning committee, I wonder, is it possible at that stage, when the papers are sent out again, for all the members of the planning committee to have a copy of the site investigation report? Because it does say on page 16, it is concluded in the site investigation there are stability concerns arising from the made-up ground, particularly along the embankments, which comprise of unpacked spoiled materials that have suffered continual collapses. It's also noted the existing embankment slopes appear to be steeper than 1 in 2. As David Cross has said, there's been an initial site investigation, and if this application is approved, there'll be a further one. But I think so that we got the whole picture, that the members of the planning committee need to have sight of that report. And also, I think on this occasion, it would be interesting to see a copy of the ecological assessment.
Councillor, all that information is publicly available already on the website.
I think on this occasion, if we can send it out with the papers as well, I think that would be helpful to the members.
We can certainly send you an electronic link. We can't provide it in paper form.
Because it's so bulky, or because it's...
Before we actually move on, which officers would you like present?
The engineers and ecologists, please.
Yeah, we've got a new ecologist now. Yes.
Can I just ask a quick question on this? Is this the site that the Rights of Way Committee are looking at next week? It is the same site the Rights of Way are looking at, yeah.
We'll leave that item as there's going to be a site visit. So the next item on the agenda, P190076, the Trucati landfill site. David's going to take us through this one as well.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to a small area of land situated in the grounds of the established Trucati landfill site. So essentially that red dot, that's setting it within the context, which is approximately in this part of the site in the aerial photograph. Leave that there. Full planning permission is being sought for the installation of a containerised picking station located within what is their existing asbestos cell. Under the existing environmental permit, the landfill can accept and dispose of asbestos already within the dedicated cell, which they've referred to as a stabilised non-reactive hazardous cell. The soil material with low asbestos content would be brought to the site, which is already regulated by the environmental permits, and the proposed picking station would then be utilised to safely remove those asbestos materials from the waste soils. This would essentially minimise the amount of soil material that is then disposed into the asbestos cell. The picking station itself would help then to provide improved facilities to remove the hazardous waste from the soil, which can then be treated and essentially recovered for other uses. This in turn obviously reduces the amount of contaminated soil that's put into the asbestos cell, and what they've indicated in their submission is that the cell is not unlimited. You know, there's a finite amount of space you can, so the more soil that you put in there, you just kind of using up space that should be used for the contaminated material. No objections were received as a result of the consultation or publicity exercises, and it's been highlighted by NRW that the Trucati themselves will need to seek a variation in the existing environmental permit to accommodate the development, and that would be agreed outside of the planning process. It's been adequately demonstrated that the development would not have an adverse impact on the surrounding landscape, nor would it give rise to significant environmental, health or amenity concerns, of which these matters would be closely monitored by NRW as part of the environmental permit as well. Therefore, it's recommended that the application be approved subject to the conditions set out on pages 29 to 30. Just to show you, so this is essentially the picking station. So the imported material goes up the conveyor. There are people within the container unit that essentially remove the asbestos from the soil, and that's then placed in the storage units below and eventually then stored within the asbestos cell. They've indicated that this facility doesn't always remain at the site. Essentially, once they've got a stockpile of the soil with asbestos, they'll move this facility from Trucati to another landfill. So it's just brought in as and when it's needed, so it's not always going to be there. Can't really see the site from many vantage points. This was just one where I could spot it most easily by the Pengundy Industrial Estate, and you can see at these sort of distances, those structures there wouldn't be would almost be indiscernible from in the landscape. Okay, thank you.
Are there any questions? Yes, Clive.
It's just one. I'm just very curious. They're obviously the operatives who have to handle these materials are obviously properly trained in every aspect, because there's clearly a health and safety issue here at work. So that's all done by whoever are their employers, and who would be their employers is not necessarily those on the site. It'd be some other contractors.
Well, it'd be the Trucati's employees that would be responsible for managing the site. The environmental permit sets out the best practice measures to deal with the asbestos, but it's my understanding that this type of asbestos is the lowest of all the risks. So it's, as I understand it, it's attached to solubles, so it's not airborne and things like that. It doesn't have the same effect.
nevertheless, if they're doing this on a quite a regular basis, they need to do it properly and correctly.
Are there any other questions? No? Are there any comments? No? Oh, well, we put it to the vote then, thanks. So, is anyone moving the motion? Yeah. Is there a seconder? Right. Oh, we put it to the vote then, thanks. Oh, it's carried unanimously. And the next two items on the agenda appeal well, they're just information reports and appeal decisions. And then item 7 is the delegated report. And I've not got any further business. No one's got any queries? No? Oh, so that's the end of the meeting then, thanks. Thanks.